Well, if you're looking to learn a little bit more about nature, you could always swing over to the Walking Mountains Science Center. And joining me now is Peter Suneson to talk a little bit about the season, which is this shedding season for
So it's
animals?
not quite shedding season. What it is, we're about to enter the rut. The rut season for most of our antlered or horned animals, the ungulates. So I thought, we're going to be seeing different signs of that period, and so I thought we'd bring in some antlers and talk about what antlers are, why animals have them, and what we're going to be looking for out on the trail to get a sense of what might be out there.
I had picked up an antler shed once, but it was about this big as opposed to what you have brought, which is massive. Why do they shed their antlers?
So most animals are going to shed their antlers once a year. When they get to elk and deer, when they get to be this big, kind of these larger size, it's not going to be every year. They're not going to shed, but they're going to do it really to save energy. They're growing their antlers really specifically for this time of year. This is when the males are going to grow their antlers out, and that's what they're going to use to compete and to show off to the females how healthy and strong they are. So when you see a rack like this, a huge, really impressive rack, that shows that animal was healthy, it's strong, it's probably going to be able to raise good offspring.
It's so impressive that they can grow to be this size, because for the most part they shed them every year, but you said when they get this big it only happens once a couple of years.
Exactly. It depends. You get an elk, this is an older one, but that's a good 3 inches in diameter. That's a lot of energy that's going to go into producing something like that. So when they get to be old, mature animals, it's not quite every year. But some of these smaller ones, the yearlings, couple-year-old deer, elk, they are going to lose them every season. This is a great example. So this is kind of what we're seeing the deer, moose, elk in now. This is a velvet. This is an antler in velvet. And what we're seeing here, these are exposed blood vessels on the outside of the antler that are providing blood, which is going to spur and stimulate that growth. What we see this type of year are the antlers, or the animals scraping their antlers on aspen, on trees, and we see that what we call buck rubs, or where it looks like they've kind of scraped it down, and that is they're scraping this kind of itchy fuzz, those blood vessels, because they're not using them anymore. We're about to get to wintertime where they're going to shed their antlers. They're going to rub those kind of old blood vessels off, and then proceed to drop their antlers later in the winter.
So it's not fur.
It's not fur. Exactly.
I know it looks kind of like fur.
It looks, and potentially, I don't know the exact requirements for naming something fur, but it feels like fur. It looks like fur, but it's actually protecting those blood vessels, those exposed blood vessels, for the antler. So this is going to scrape off. You can see this animal got a little bit scraped off already. They'll be down to pure bone, and then they'll drop them over winter, and then we head out with our dogs late spring to pick them all up.
Yeah, I know. I love being able to find them. It's like finding gold. It's so exciting when you do. And do moose shed as well?
So they will. Moose, much bigger antlers, palmate, so kind of the wider shape, almost like a hand up there. They will shed. They shed much less regularly. So they're gonna grow velvet on the outside. We actually saw one up at Fulford just last week that the velvet was just dripping and it was a bloody mess. It looked like it had been in a fight, but totally natural, totally normal, just scraping it off. They'll shed them, not every year. It takes a lot of energy to grow those big antlers as well.
And now, what do we need to know about animals we're in that transition between fall and winter, and if we're out hiking?
Great question. So, the rut season, that's their mating season. That's when the animals are going to be looking to pair up, and that means aggressiveness is going to go up. So, again, if we see bull elk, surrounded by 3 or 4 females, we're going to want to keep our distance like we do anyways. We want to give them as much space, let them conserve their energy. We want them to form a happy couple and produce some offspring.
Absolutely. And now if we find, antler sheds like this, what do we do with them? Like, do we just keep them?
So that's a great question. There is a season. They actually ask people to stay off the trails and out of the national forest until a certain date in the spring to prevent people from wandering out and kind of scaring off the herds that are using that last remaining open space. So check with your local Forest Service. If you do find them, in most places you can keep them if it is in season, but check with local landowners, your local Forest Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Peter. We really appreciate it. And, we can always get some more information about upcoming events that you guys have and any seminars and talks and discussions on walkingmountains.org.
You got it. Yep, walkingmountains.org. In the next couple of weeks, we are going to be teasing our Fright at the Museum, our big Halloween event coming up next month, so stay tuned for that.
It's so much fun. It's so great for all the kids. So definitely log on to walkingmountains.org to get a little bit more information. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about Fright at the Museum as well as we are approaching October. Coming up next, though, we're going to check in with Claire and her epic morning. But first, a look at your weather forecast.